Hello, Accelerated CP Algebra 2. This is our first lesson. This is 1A. There will be some questions embedded in this video so we can learn as a class. What we'll basically do is we're going to have a total of 5 videos a week. 2 of them normally will be watched in class, and I will give you guys a packet of the notes that would go along with this during class, and then you'd be responsible for watching the last 3 videos, and I'll embed questions on those videos for you to watch, and this would allow me to check for understanding when you go through this. So let's go through this lesson together as class. Please make sure on your notes, if there's any questions that you see during class that you would like me to go over, we'll go over those live in class. So make any notes that you might want to do. And then if you have questions about the notes when you do those at home, of the 3 videos at home, write those down, and then the following time we have class, we'll definitely go over those live. So this is the best way I can figure out how to make learning work for us and have you all prepared to take the next level of math. Okay, so we're going to evaluate expressions to determine if the answer is always positive, always negative, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. And let's go though. So solve the equations for the indicated variable. Okay, so first one, let me move this down so we don't have to see it. And being our things are out of, our licenses expire, the Smart Notebook limited mode will go away once I start making these during the school year, but I'm actually making these in July right now. So this says let P represent a positive number. So positive number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And N represent a negative number. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, whatever. Determine if the expression will always be positive, always be negative, or sometimes be positive and sometimes be negative. And let's support our decision. Okay. So, very first question. So we have a negative number, but there's one little key that we have to see here. That negative out front does not get influenced by this. Okay, so that means that negative's got to come along. So if we were to say take -2 and plug it in and square it, and then like do a positive number, say, I don't know, 3, and square it. So if I square -2, I go -2 times -2, that gives me 4. 3 times 3 squared is 9. But notice this negative here is still hanging out. So this is always going to give me a negative answer. Because the negative sign, when it's not bounded or in parentheses or square brackets or something like that, means it's like an afterthought after it takes place. So the next one, let's see. I take a negative number and I add it to twice a positive number. Well, if I took, like, say, -10, and then I made a positive number of 1, well, that's going to give me a negative answer. But what if I took another example? So this answer would be negative. But what if I were to take another number, say -2 plus 2 times 6? Well, that's going to give me a positive number. So this is sometimes negative, sometimes positive. So this one could be a positive or a negative answer. So sometimes each. And then same thing with this one. Let's see, we have a negative number. So let's pick a small negative number, say -3, subtract a positive number, 5. Well, that gives me -8. Okay, so that's negative. What about if we had, say, -10 minus 6? Okay, remember that's a positive number, and this minus is an afterthought. It gives me a negative number as well. So I'd say these are always going to be negative. So there's just some tricks to it. There's not normally a normal sample. I mean, you could pick big numbers and try it, and small numbers and try it. I wouldn't pick fractions or decimals, because there's not some hidden agenda on any of those. Okay, this is the next thing. We want to start solving these. So solve each equation using the equation for y in terms of x, showing your algebraic steps. So for each equation, solve each equation for y. That means I want to get y by itself. You recognize that as slope-intercept form. So if I want to solve for y, I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides first. And remember, when I combine an x with a number to a number that's not by addition or subtraction, I can't combine it. That's a positive 10, right? And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I'll write my result above it. So I get y equals, because those 2's would cancel out, negative 5 over 2x, and then 10 over 2 is 5. And make sure you watch your signs. Okay? Next problem. We want to do the same idea, and I know the smartboard thing is in the way, but I think we still classify this. So I would distribute that to get rid of the parentheses first. So I get 12x minus 4y equals 10x plus 18. And let's move this down a little bit so we can see it. Oh, look, we can see more of our answer. All right, so we want to get y by itself, remember? So we want that to be by itself. So I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides. So x combined with the x's, those are going to cancel. That's going to be negative 4y equals negative 2x plus 18. And the last step is, well, those are being held together by multiplication, so I'm going to divide everything by negative 4. So my answer to this is going to be y equals, negative over negative is positive, 2 over 4 reduces to 1 over 2, and the x comes along for the ride. And then I get positive over negative, so my answer is going to be negative. 18 over 4 reduces to 9 over 2. And notice I left it as an improper fraction. I didn't convert it to a fraction, or a mixed number, or I didn't put it as a decimal. So improper fractions are totally okay. Remember, improper fraction means when the number on top is larger than the bottom. Okay, this is one you would have seen in a science class, and this is basically converting to Celsius or centigrade, depending upon how your teacher wants to do it. So I want C by itself, so I'm going to subtract 32 from both sides first. So I get F subtract 32 equals 9 over 5 times C. Okay, I want the C by itself, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. And what I can do is I'm just going to put that 5/9 out front. I could distribute it in, but at this point I don't think I really need to. So these cancel out. So I find that C is equal to 5/9 times the quantity F minus 32. And we can move on. Okay, and then it says find the temperature in degrees Celsius for a 77 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, so I'm going to plug this in for our F. Well, we could plug it into the original, but that's kind of silly. I would plug it into this one because I'm going to plug the 77 in right there. So I get 5/9 times 77, subtract 32. So let's do this math in here first. So 77 subtract 32. 77 minus 32. Sometimes I like to do a column. I'm kind of old school like that. Sorry about that. That's going to give me 45. So I get C equals 5/9 times 45. Well, 9 goes into 45 5 times, and then 5 times 5 is 25. So that means 77 degrees would be the same as Fahrenheit, would be the same as 25 degrees in Celsius or centigrade, whatever, again, what your teacher decides to use. Centigrade's kind of an older term, but sometimes that's how your teacher might explain it. Solve the equation for the indicated variable. This formula is the surface area of a cylinder, so this came from geometry. So we want to get our h by itself. So I want to get h by itself. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 2 pi r squared from both sides. And I have the s over here. So I'm going to get s minus 2 pi r squared equals 2 pi r h. Now, I'm going to put this whole thing in parentheses just like that, because now I want the h by itself. So if I divide both sides by 2 pi r, and as long as you keep that grouped, it should be good. So h is equal to s minus 2 pi r squared. And keep that in parentheses. No reason to start canceling, because we have basically on top an entire equation. So I don't want to go start dividing out the pi's and the r's. And I'm going to divide that by 2 pi r. And there's our answer. And again, notice I kept it in parentheses. Now, some people might say, hey, could I have said the answer is this? And I'd say be very careful. Make sure your line for division is definitely seen that it goes across the entire thing. And I think that's an acceptable answer. Problem is sometimes people don't make that big old blue line there, the fraction line, large enough to know what's really it's over. So be cautious when you do that. Or you can just keep it in parentheses. It's kind of your choice. This would have come from a homework problem that we had done in years past. So we want to find the height of a cylinder given the radius is 6 centimeters and the surface area is 72 square centimeters. So we want to find the height of a cylinder. So we have to think about a cylinder, remember, is like a can of soda. Okay, that's my really bad representation, but remember you have a radius here, you have a height here. So you have a circle on top and a circle on bottom, and they told us the surface area. So the surface area means I have the top and the bottom. So surface area is, being I have two circles, so a circle we know is pi r squared, but I have two of them, okay? And I'll eventually get rid of those parentheses. They're not necessarily needed. Times the height, but we also have to realize this around here is really just a rectangle. So we have this height, so this is like the circumference of a circle right here. So remember, circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So then I have 2 pi r height. Okay, so let's rewrite this without having the parentheses in there. Again, this is one of those equations, you know, I don't know if you necessarily would have remembered this equation. If you get stuck on one of these equations from back in the past, obviously if you're watching at home, you can, you know, do a Google search and find out what the surface area of a cylinder equation is. You can find that easily. Or, you know, email me, or you can just ask in class and we'll make sure we'll get through that. So they said find the height of a cylinder given the radius is 6. So my R value is 6. And the surface area is 72. So that's my S. S is equal to 72. Okay, so let's plug it in. So I get 72 equals 2 pi. We already said R is 6, so I get 6 squared. Yeah, we can take care of that math in a little bit. And I get 2 pi. R we said was 6, and then H we don't know. That's our big unknown. Okay, so let's start figuring out this problem. So I have 72 equals 6 squared is 36. 36 times that 2 is 72. So I get 72 pi there. Plus 2 times 6 is 12. So I get 12 pi height. Okay, great. Again, we're trying to find the height, right? And I'm not going to sit there and worry about things being in terms of pi. I think we can leave it. I mean, pi is a great number. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go 72 minus 72 pi equals 12 pi h. And then I could put that whole thing in parentheses if I wanted to, which would be great. And we're going to divide everything by 12 pi. 12 pi. So I now found I have a height. And there's a little trick to this one. Okay, 12 goes into 72. So we can reduce that. I'm not going to reduce pi. I'm going to leave pi in there. So 12 goes into 72 6 times. So I get 6 minus 6 pi divided by pi. Now some of you are like, where did that 12 just go? Well, that 12 went into both of those. That's where those 6's came from. Okay, being that this doesn't have a pi with it, I'm not going to worry about getting rid of it. So I have a height of 6 minus 6 pi, all divided by pi centimeters. And again, notice I have a really long division sign. Sometimes some of you might prefer to put in the parentheses. Either way, it's right. I think that answer is totally appropriate. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, but I have the pi button on my calculator. That's fantastic, but pi is an irrational number, so you won't get that answer I have right there is an exact answer. If you go and say, oh, well, pi is 3.14159, and it keeps going, however far you take it out, you still wouldn't get the exact answer because pi just continues forever and forever. Okay, solve the equation for the indicated variable. This is the formula for volume of a sphere. So a sphere, remember, is a ball. Okay, So it's a sphere. So we want to solve this for r. So I want to get r by itself. Realize r is raised to the third power. So I think the first thing we can do is we can multiply both sides by 3/4, the reciprocal. So I'm going to get 3 over 4v. Now we could have 3v all over 4. That would still work, but we'll just keep it like this for right now. This is going to go ahead and cancel out. Equals pi r to the third. Now we're going to divide both sides by pi. So I'm going to get 3. Let's make that v up on top now. 4 over pi. And we're not changing much. And then we have r to the third. Well, how in the world do we undo r to the third? So that is something to the third power. Okay, so if it's to the third power, that means I have to take the third root of both sides. So I'm going to put that little tiny script in there. So I'm going to go third root of that. So my answer is going to be r is equal to the third root of 3v, here's a v, over 4 pi. And that's how that answer falls. That's it. That's all we have to do. So it's pretty cool. Some people might say, well, we shouldn't have a radical in the denominator. You're absolutely right, but that's something we'll focus on later. For right now, I think we're totally set to keep something like there. And that's it. Okay. So again, make sure you write any questions down that you might have had. And if this is one you're doing at home, write down any questions, even if it's some of the questions are from the video that I've embedded questions in that you had to answer. So if you got stuck on one of those, like let's say you missed it, basically what you need to realize is each of your videos at home, the 3 videos at home, are basically going to be worth, each time you watch them, you can get up to 15 points. Okay, and how that is going to work is if you watch the video, I can see that you watched it, and you can get 10 points. And then the other 5 points comes from correct answers. So let's say we had like 7 answers and you missed one of them. You might be able to get like 14 point, I don't know, 2 points out of 15. Okay, and that's okay. I mean, this homework is basically now watching the videos and doing the problems that are embedded in the videos. So, if you miss a point here or there, that's not going to hurt you. If you miss the points when we do a quiz, next time we have class, actually, you would have to do it. Actually, we'll probably have a quiz today as well, just a small one. Don't panic. We will totally make it a good quiz that we'll be able to grab onto and do just fine. So thank you very much, everybody.